Hello and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar. Managing stress when working with youth in foster care. I am your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder and director of the Foster Care Institute. I'm an international speaker and consultant and trainer for child welfare programs. I'm an author of several foster care books. And I have been a foster parent myself to over 60 plus children who have come through my home and been a part of my family. As you can imagine, with over 60 plus children through our homes, my wife and I have experienced a great deal of stress when we have had children and youth placed into our homes from foster care. Youth filled with anxiety who came to live with us. Youth who had issues of attachment, trust, anger management issues, eating disorders, sleeping anxieties, reactive attachment disorder, and many other disorders and challenges they faced. Was it stressful for my wife and I? On so many levels, it was. So I can personally relate to what you experience as you care for and work with youth in crisis. Our goal during this webinar is to increase your awareness of what the feelings of stress that you might experience and most likely will experience when you work with youth in foster care. Our key objectives are to increase your awareness of stress and how it impacts your life, and to help you gain an understanding of how to develop, create, and implement some strategies that will help you with these feelings of stress. Now, before we talk about what stress you might experience, it's important to recognize the amount of stress that youth in foster care experience. As we've seen here at the Foster Care Institute, when a teenager is removed from his family, removed from his mother and father, perhaps removed from his siblings, removed from all of his belongings, his games, his stuffed animals, his belongings, his house, his home, his relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, neighbors, when he's removed from the school he might have gone to, everything that is familiar to him, when that is taken from him and he is placed into a foster care environment, a residential home with strangers, with strange adults, with strange teenagers that are unfamiliar to him, it is a very, very challenging and difficult and stressful time for him. For many youth, it is a time of uncertainty. Questions like, how long will I be here? Why am I here? Did I do anything wrong? Did my parents do something wrong? Will I ever go home? Does anybody care about me? Am I worth anything? Am I worth being loved? Does anybody love for me? Sometimes they may experience guilt. They may feel that it's their fault. They might think they did something to be placed into a foster care environment, a residential home. They may think it's their fault. That adds a level of stress. And for so many, they are overwhelmed with feelings, overwhelmed with emotions, overwhelmed with anxieties. They simply do not know how to properly and healthily process those emotions or express them. It is a time of stress being placed into a residential home or foster care placement. We have also discussed here at the Foster Care Institute how for people like yourself who work with these youth, it is a stressful time as well. You invest much of your time working with youth in foster care. Not only are you investing your time while there at the home, you invest your time outside as well because you invest yourself emotionally in this job. You grow to care for these teens in crisis. You grow to share some of their feelings, some of their emotions, some of their concerns, some of their anxieties. It's a time of anxiety working with youth in foster care. You invest yourselves physically when you work with these youth and you care for them and you help to provide for them and help them in general. It is such a different type of job. Your friends, your family members, those closest to you, hey, they truly don't understand what kind of job it is, what the lifestyle it is, because it's a different kind of career. It's a different type of lifestyle when you are working with youth in crisis. There's nothing similar to your type of job, and that is stressful. Today's staff are simply overworked, overwhelmed with the amount of paperwork, responsibilities, tasks that you have to do. Sadly, you're under-resourced. You do not have many times the proper resources and training to help these youth. You're under-supported. These residential homes are understaffed, and quite simply, you're underpaid. When you work with youth who are in crisis, it is most likely going to be the hardest job you will ever do. Indeed, it is a job that can be so very stressful. It is a job that brings unique stresses that's different than any other job. Now, excessive stress, when you work with youth in crisis, youth who have issues of attachment and trust, anger management, and other disorders, it builds up excessive stress. And excessive stress can show up in a different number of ways. So it is so important. In fact, it is critical for you that you're familiar with those different forms of stress, those different forms of emotional, physical, and behavioral indicators of stress. Because when you're familiar with these indicators of stress, it's going to help you as you care for youth in crisis. And it's going to help you care for yourself. Indeed, as I've said here so many times at the Foster Care Institute, if you can't care for yourself, quite frankly, you can't care for children and youth in crisis. So what makes your job different? What makes your job unique? What causes different levels of stress in your job? Well, there are so many different causes of stress when you're working with youth in crisis. And let's look at that. To begin with, there is the stress that goes along with the administrative side. Maybe you feel that you are under some type of microscope or scrutiny from your administrators or your supervisors. Perhaps you feel a sense of public scrutiny. There are so many myths and misconceptions that go along with foster care and caring for youth in foster care. And sometimes your friends and family members may have those misconceptions, and maybe they might judge you in some fashion. That can be stressful. When you have to make sure that all mandates, all policies, all procedures at your agency and your residential home are in compliance, that adds to stress. Unfortunately, there's a high turnover of staff when it comes to working with youth in crisis at a foster care facility. Well, that changeover of staff and that changeover of policies, when policies change over as well, that can add to staff. The inadequate or ineffective supervision of these youth is also stressful for you as well. There is the increased demands on work. Increased work demands due to sometimes brief or long-term staff vacancies. When there is staff turnover and there is a need for more staffing, in addition, your work demands might increase due to it, that is stressful. The lack of adequate support within your agency, within your home, within the facility are also stressful. Anytime a teenager might be removed from the home, that can be stressful as well. Perhaps he did something that it made him have to be removed from the home and placed elsewhere. That can be stressful. When you work with youth who have issues of hostility, who have issues of anger management, who might have issues of reactive attachment disorder, that can often be stressful. When the children and the youth are in crisis, and their cases are in crisis, that's stressful. The high-profile traumatic cases that these youth might experience, that's stressful as well. Any time that a teenager's parental rights are terminated, when he is no longer associated with his family in regards to parental rights, hey, that's stressful upon him. That's also stressful upon you as well. There is the lack of community resources and the lack of community support systems that many times these youth might need, and that is stressful. Those youth who are really, really struggling, those youth who might be filled with different forms of anxiety, those youth who are overwhelmed with emotions they don't know how to process, or emotions they simply don't understand, many times they might try to engage in arguments with you as a result, because they're filled with so much anxiety and confusion, it can lead towards anger. And they might try to get you into an argument, or might try to argue with you. That's stressful. Those youth who are defiant, those youth who just refuse to follow the policies, procedures, and house rules, that's stressful. And then simply working with youth who are struggling with their own emotional challenges, as you work with them and try to help them, that is stressful. So as you can see, there are many reasons why your job is stressful. Your job is so different than any other type of job and has different forms of stress. Different forms of stress that your friends and family members, again, simply do not understand or appreciate. So what do those stress indicators look like? What are some of the signs and symptoms that you are experiencing stress in the workplace? Well, there are many symptoms. You might become angry over such little things. You yourself might become anxious or filled with anxiety. You yourself might become argumentative. You might argue back with the youth. You might argue with your supervisor. You might argue with your friends and family members or those closest with you. You might have difficulty with making decisions or with decision-making problems. When you're filled with stress, sometimes it can lead to depression. Perhaps you're having difficulty having a normal type of conversation with your coworkers or with those outside of work. Other symptoms might include engaging in excessive habits. Perhaps you are drinking alcohol at a much more excessive rate, or maybe you're spending more money trying to find some sort of satisfaction. Maybe you're eating more food than normal due to your stress level. If you're a smoker, maybe you're smoking even more due to the level of stress. Perhaps you feel unworthy or you don't feel good enough. Maybe the stress is so overwhelming you that you don't feel that you are worthy of this job or unworthy in general, or you're simply not good at this job. Perhaps you become easily irritated towards the youth, irritated towards supervisors and other fellow coworkers, irritated with your friends and family members, irritated with yourself, or irritated just in general. Maybe you're experiencing a lack of sense of humor. You find no humor anymore. Or maybe you feel that you are scapegoating, that you are blaming others for issues or problems, or blaming yourself. You might experience a sense of conflict when it comes to your own personal values, personal morals, personal ethics, or work ethics when you're experiencing stress. As you experience stress, you might get behind in that oh so important documentation and paperwork that you have to fill out. Maybe you feel that you're being criticized from your coworkers and your colleagues. Maybe the stress is a challenge when it comes to your performance evaluations, and you feel that your performance evaluations are being criticized due to your stress level. Perhaps you are taking more time off for minor ailments or for minor sicknesses. Perhaps you're withdrawing from your coworkers, withdrawing from the youth, withdrawing from your friends and family members due to your stress level. Maybe your work habits or your ethics are suffering as well. When it comes to physical symptoms, there are many when it comes to stress-related work, or work-related stress, if you will. These include abdominal pains, or changes in your weight that you simply are unexpected or you can't explain. Maybe you're feeling very clumsy, or you're having a difficult time focusing or concentrating, both at work and outside of work, both in the workplace and at home. Other physical symptoms might include diarrhea or feelings of constipation. Digestion can be a symptom, a physical symptom, when you're filled with stress. Maybe you're feeling really run down, or you have that feeling often. Perhaps you get colds or flu-like symptoms on a frequent basis, or headaches on a frequent basis as well. Those are physical symptoms of stress. Maybe your personal appearance is changing as well. Maybe you're experiencing poor hygiene due to the stress that you're experiencing. Or maybe you're having sleep disturbances. Now, sleep disturbances include interrupted sleep. You have difficulty sleeping throughout the night and your sleep is interrupted. You might have difficulty getting to sleep each night. Or maybe you're waking up each morning feeling exhausted or tired or having a difficult time getting up in the morning. If your sleep is interrupted in the night, maybe you're having a difficult time getting back to sleep. Maybe your sleep habits simply are changing and you're feeling, again, exhausted, drowsy, tired. These are all physical symptoms of stress. So, as we mentioned earlier, if you can't care for yourself, you can't care for the youth that you're working with, and you can't properly do your job. So with that in mind, how do we manage these forms of stress? There are so many stress indicators at work. How do we take care of and manage that stress? To begin with, it's so important to recognize this. When a child is upset, when a child is angry, when a child is lashing out, when a child is refusing to follow the rules, when a child is arguing with you or yelling at you or perhaps calling you names or being mean-spirited, it's important that you do not take it personally. Do not take it personally. You're not their parent. The child is not attacking you personally. Most likely, this child is afraid. This child is filled with anxiety. This child is concerned about their future. This child is hurting. This child is in emotional pain. So when they do lash out at you, when they do argue with you, when they refuse to do what you ask them to do or follow the house rules, when they call you those mean-spirited words, it's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with their own stress, with their own anxiety, with their own fears, with their own pain. So, as a result, you need to focus on their behavior. Respond to why they're acting this way, why they are behaving this way, why they are arguing with you or yelling at you, why they're feeling this way. When dealing with stress, it's important that you are aware of your own personal stressors, what stresses you out, if you will. We all have something that stresses us out. And when it comes to working with youth in crisis, that stress level often rises. So be aware of what your own personal stressors are, and again, what stresses you out. And be aware also of the behavioral, the emotional, the physical reactions that you might have, whether it is sinking into depression, weight gain, hygiene, sleep, whatever it might be. What are your personal reactions to it? When you're aware of it, then you can help address it. So recognize what can be changed about it. Recognize what your stressors are and recognize how they can be reduced and if the intensity of that stressor can be reduced. Also recognize if the duration or the time frame of the stressor can be reduced as well. Can you at work have a mental or physical timeout? Can you step away for a few moments? Can you ask another coworker to step in and help this child or engage in this child or talk to this teen while you have that brief, momentary, physical or mental timeout where you step away, you step outside, you step to the break room. You have that timeout. When you're working with youth in crisis, it's important that you can't make them happy. In fact, we have to recognize that we can't please everyone all the time. So it's important that we put things in their proper perspective, if at all possible. When you're working with these youth who are filled with anxiety, you're not going to be able to make them happy all the time. That's important to remember. You can't please everyone. You can't help every teenager at every single moment with everything they're going through all of the time. It's important for you to remember and keep that in mind. You can't please everyone. It's also important to recognize this. You do not have to win every battle or win every argument when working with youth in crisis. You don't have to have the last word every time either. Because when you try to win every battle, when you try to win every argument, when you try to have the last word every single time, most likely your stress level is going to rise. And you're going to feel a great deal more anxiety and stress in your workplace and after work as well. Again, you don't have to win those battles. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to have the last word. In fact, when you try to win every battle or have the last word when he's walking away from you, it's going to only escalate the problem and make it worse for both, for all involved. So sometimes let him have the last word. Sometimes let him walk away. Allow him to walk away sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to let the teen walk away with the last word. Let him have some wins in his life. Remember, he is placed in this home without his control. He does not want to be there. He has no control in his life. He has very little wins or control in his life in general. Being placed into a foster care environment is not a win in his life. He has so few wins. Allow him to have a win once in a while. Allow him to go to his room and cool down without a word from you. Look at that quote there. When you let someone else win an argument, often you both end up winners. So allow him to win that argument. Let him have some control. Allow him to go to his bedroom and cool down without getting the last word in. When you feel that your stress level is rising, try to practice slow, deep breathing. This helps you to bring your heart rate down and bring respiration back to normal. So perhaps when you need that time out, step outside, step on the porch, go to the common area, go to the break room, wherever it might be, and try to have that slow, deep breathing. Breathing in slowly, breathing out slowly. Breathing in, holding it, and exhaling. Practice these relaxation techniques to help reduce the tension and the stress in your body. For some, it might be closing their eyes and breathing in and counting to 10 and exhaling. For some, it might go outside and surrounding themselves in nature and slowly breathing and taking in relaxation techniques. Find what works best for you. Now, when we work with youth in crisis, it's important to recognize that success looks different for each one. For one, success might be going to class. For another, it might be passing a test. For another, it might be keeping a room clean. For another, it might not be arguing for a day or yelling at somebody for a day. For another, it might be cooking a meal. For another, it might be joining the military or a trade school. For another, it might be going to college. For another, it might be simply graduating from high school or passing a class. It's important that we take time to celebrate all levels of success, no matter how small, no matter the size or level of success. Not only does it help the youth, help them build self-confidence and gain social skills and trust and attachment and all those wonderful benefits, it also helps you as well. Take time to celebrate your own work successes. If you had a great work success, perhaps today was a day that you did not talk back. Perhaps a day that you were able to help a youth learn a new cooking skill. Perhaps the day is a time where you were able to help a youth with their schoolwork, Perhaps today is a day that you sat down and you used some emphatic listening skills. Perhaps today you helped the youth who was really struggling with anxiety. Perhaps today is the day that you got all your paperwork and your documentation done. Whatever it might be, celebrate your own success at work as well. Celebrate all successes. Take care of yourself. As I said earlier, if you can't care for yourself, you cannot care for these youth who need all of your attention and time. These include getting regular exercise. Exercise might include walking at work, walking around the neighborhood at home, walking in a gym, jogging, going for a bike ride, swimming, going to the gym. But it's imperative that you get regular exercise. Not only does it help you physically, it also helps you emotionally and mentally as well. Try to avoid using excessive use of caffeines or nicotines or other sorts of stimulants, including those very popular caffeine drinks. Try to maintain your ideal weight and try to get a good night's sleep each night as well. All of these help you when you're feeling stressful. Helps to keep you healthy and balanced. Other forms of taking care of yourself include mixing leisure while at work. Talk to your colleagues and your coworkers about what your stress levels might be. What might set you off? What might get you upset? What might bring stress to you? Take a mental break once in a while. Ask your supervisor if you can go outside for some fresh air or to have a time out, if you will. Talk to your supervisor about what you find stressful and what you find challenging at your job. Most likely, your supervisor is going to have similar stresses and similar challenges as well. After all, your supervisor is just as human and has just as many emotions as you do. If you're finding that you might be sinking into depression or might be having some anxious thoughts, it's okay to seek out professional help. In fact, perhaps your caseworker, your coworkers, your supervisor might be able to suggest some counseling services for you as well. It's also important for you to recognize that you might be experiencing emotions that are challenging. Expect the following emotions from time to time as you work with youth filled with anxiety. Expect from time to time that you will feel frustrated or you might be filled with anger. Expect from time to time that you might experience feelings of disappointment or sadness or sorrow. Recognize that these feelings and these emotions are normal. Allow yourself kindness. Give yourself kindness. Allow and extend the same type of kindness, the same type of patience, the same type of understanding and gentleness that you show with your friends, that you show with the youth, that you show with the coworkers and others that you know. Show that same sort of kindness and gentleness and patience with yourself. You deserve to treat yourself with kindness. Don't belittle yourself. Don't cut yourself down. Don't treat yourself poorly. Treat yourself with the kindness that you deserve. In fact, allow and extend the same type of kindness, patience, and gentleness towards yourself as you would give your friends. One way that you can help yourself during times of stress is to sit down with your eyes closed for a few moments. maybe at work, maybe at home. Breathing deeply, listening to some soft music. For you, perhaps it's meditation. For you, perhaps it's prayer. For myself, each morning before I begin a day that is often filled with different sorts of stresses, I spend time in prayer. And as I drive to work, I listen to some soft music. Play with some stress relieving toys or games. These might include that mini basketball goal at the behind the door of your office. Maybe having foam stress balls to squeeze during stressful moments. Maybe a punching bag at work. Perhaps you might use word games or crossword puzzles to disengage yourself from the stressful time of work and engage yourself mentally into something different that is not work related. And when you're feeling very overwhelmed with stress, or even overwhelmed with work in general, ask for help. Ask your supervisor, your coworkers for help. Ask your friends and family members for help. Ask a professional therapist or counselor for help. To be sure, you need to take time for yourself. You need to take time for yourself. You need to look after yourself and don't neglect what makes you special, what makes you unique, what makes you you. Take time for your hobbies, your interests. Take time perhaps to read. Not only read for information, but read for pleasure. Find time to spend time with your friends, whether it's having get-togethers at your own house, or going shopping with friends, or out to dinner, or out for a walk. Try to engage in some very personal, quiet time as well. Again, breathing in and out slowly, prayer, meditation, going for a walk by yourself. As you work with youth who are filled with anxiety and filled with anger and disorders, many times we think about and worry about their future or our future. Try to stay focused on here and now. Don't worry about tomorrow or things that are out of your control. In fact, don't allow worries in general to overwhelm you. Work worries, family worries, health worries. Don't allow those worries to overwhelm you. And again, don't worry about those things that are out of your control or things that might be happening tomorrow. Focus on the here. Focus on today. Focus on now. For many of us, one of the stress ways reducers is to listen to some music on the way home. Turn on the radio. Listen to some relaxing or favorite music or maybe even spiritual music. Put the phone on speaker and call a friend and vent a little bit if you need to. Perhaps you might spend some time in prayer or meditation on the way home. Maybe you might tune into a favorite podcast as you drive home. These are ways to help reduce stress from work as you leave work. After all, you do not want to take that stress home with you. Sometimes we feel so overwhelmed by stress, we have so much on our plate, if you will, so many responsibilities. There are times we might need to say no. No to something at work. No to something at church or a faith-based organization when they've asked you to do something. No to a friend or family member that's asked a favor of you. No to one more thing that you simply cannot do. Don't feel guilty about saying no once in a while. In fact, that word no might relieve some of that stress and open up some more yeses in your life. To be sure, find support in your own personal support groups. Surround yourself with people who can help you and understand you. Whether it is a support group at work, with colleagues and coworkers who understand what you're going through, Perhaps it's a support group at a church or a faith-based organization. Maybe it's a support group in your neighborhood or in your friends group or maybe in your own family. But find some type of support group that can lift you up during those difficult times, that can help you during those stressful times, that you can share your feelings, your anxieties, your stress with without judgment. And somebody that maybe you need to cry a shoulder on. And remember, this is an important reminder. When that youth is screaming, yelling, cursing at you, refusing to do what you've asked them to do, trying to argue with everything that you say, do not take it personally. Remember, you're not their parent. They're not attacking you personally. They're afraid. They're scared. They're hurting. They are in pain. They're overwhelmed with feelings and emotions that they don't understand. They're not in control. They are afraid. It's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. Remember, focus on their behavior. Focus on why they are feeling this way. There's a reason why they're upset. There's a reason why they're angry. There's a reason why they're filled with their own stress. Don't allow their stress to bring you stress as well. For much more, visit our website, the Foster Care Institute, at drjohndegarmofostercare.com. If you haven't already, I invite you to please follow me on Facebook at Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care Expert, where you can reach out to me and find out much more information as well. Follow me on Twitter, Dr. John DeGarmo, or email me if you have questions about this webinar or anything else at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. And don't forget, you now have access to all of our CCYA or respite care or RBWO training webinars. And you can get to access those. Simply ask your supervisor. You might find the book, The Foster Parenting Manual, a very helpful book as well. Even though you're not a foster parent, as you work with youth in foster care, this book has many tips and strategies that can help you as well. In fact, we have many great foster care books for you at the Foster Care Institute. I want to thank you for watching this webinar. I want to thank you for all that you do to help youth in crisis. Thank you for working with youth in need. You are truly making a difference. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.